Wastelanders? Christopher here, Gaslands, NorCal. Thanks for joining me once again for another conversion video. Now, I've done a lot of MFP builds lately. I think I've done pretty much every kind of vehicle. Maybe not a tank, but I've done a bus, war rig. I actually did a food truck for MFP. So I've got a lot of fans out there for the MFP builds, and a lot of them actually come from Australia, which, as we all know, that's where the whole Road Warrior, Mad Max, everything originated. The movie was based in Australia. So I absolutely love doing the MFPs. Now, I've got one of my fans that's out in Australia. His name is Mick, and he found some castings that he sent me pictures of that looked really, really cool, and I'm sure I could not find them in America. So he sent me one to convert into an MFP build. Now, it is the Barn Find Slammed Edition Ford Falcon Police Australian vehicle, which I'm kind of hard pressed to take apart and make it an MFT just because it already looks so cool. But I'm gonna do it for Gaslands, for you. So let's get this thing all ripped up and get it going. But you know what? First things first, we gotta get this baby apart, get her in the stripper. Alright, so we're all stripped and primed and painted, and I did use the spray paint that I normally use for these. And the weather here in Northern California has been kind of windy and rainy and stuff, which is not entirely unexpected, but it's just a little irregular. So when I went out and started to paint this one yellow, it had kind of started to sprinkle, and I kind of wanted to see what would happen with the paint and everything else. I figured I could just re-strip it again if it got screwed up. And you can see, over there, on the hood and a little bit on the back, some raindrops fell or some water splashed, so there's little kind of divots in the paint, which I think is going to give it kind of a cool effect, kind of a happy accent kind of thing. So I'm definitely going to grunge those and see how those come out. Now we're going to go through and paint it in the regular red, white, and blue stripes for the MFP, get some decals and stuff going on there. Probably do the MFP stripe down the front with the decal on the front and everything, and then start getting it all back together. I was really kind of going back and forth on if I wanted to jack this thing up, but the undercarriage and the wheels and everything for the original casting are just so cool. I'm just going to keep it on there and grunge it up a little bit, so we'll see how that all turns out. But yeah, so that's what we're going to do. So first of all, we're going to get this thing all agraxed up and see what pops out, and then do the MFP stripes and the decals and stuff, and then we'll see where we're at. But looking pretty cool, loving this casting, so glad that got it sent to me. So let's get some grunge going on. Alrighty, all grunged up and everything, and you might be wondering why I grunged it now before doing the rest of the colors. A big part of it, for me at least, when I'm doing it, is so I can see where all the lines and everything are at a little bit more clearly when I'm doing painting. That way I can kind of gauge where I'm going to have lines, especially if I'm painting additional details and stuff onto the vehicle that's going to require a little bit of precision, and I don't want to do taping or anything. And so I'm going to hand do all the lines for the red, white, and blue before I get the decals and stuff on, and then I will go through and grunge it again just to make everything kind of blend together. Now for the red, white, and blue, for the red and the blue, I of course love to use the Monument Hobbies Pro Acryl. We're just going to use the regular blue and the Bold Pyro red. But for the white, I really like to use the Formula P3, this Menoth white highlight, just because of the consistency and the color and everything else. It's the smoothest white I've found. Even, I mean, the Monument Hobby stuff is great, but the white, just like a lot of whites, can get really chalky and grainy and stuff and difficult to work with unless you thin it out a lot. And this, it's just right out of the can or bottle or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't require any thinning, just goes on really smooth. So let's get the painting on there. Like I said, I'm going to do it by hand, so we'll go through that and speed through it and see how well I do. I've been practicing for a while now, so should turn out pretty good. So yeah, let's get some striping going on. Alrighty, so the lines are all done, looking pretty good. Now, one of the things that I have found using the spray paint yellow that I normally use from AK, and then doing the grunge with the Agrax, when it gets that color of yellow, when you're doing the lines, if you kind of mess up and you need to correct it in the yellow, this light rust, it's a yellowish rust from MIG, actually makes it blend pretty well. I'm not sure if you can see that, because I went a little over on the red right in here and just use a little bit of that yellow, and you really can't even see it until I point it out, and even then from a farther away it really blends in. So that's kind of a trick that I learned just doing this so much. And if you're going into practice lines, or if you want to practice lines like doing freehand and stuff, I found that doing MFP cars is actually a great way to do it, because it's easier to correct like the blue and the red over the white and everything else. As long as everything's dry, it's not going to smudge or anything. If you're using the right paints, like the ones that I are using, they work really well. But yeah, so doing those for lines is really good practice, and helps get them a little bit straighter. Obviously mine aren't perfect, but I still got a little bit of shake. I don't think that's ever going to go away, but yeah, so actually looking really good, liking how it turned out. Next we're going to do the decals, get the MFP on there, the shields on the side, and the logo on the front. I'm going to do an Interceptor on the back right here, and I'm actually going to use that yellow, the light rust, to paint a yellow line across the back just so you can see the Interceptor better, because the black lettering on the blue paint, really you can't see it that much. So that way it'll make it pop out more. So we'll get all the decals and stuff on there, and then we'll go do some chipping before we start getting it all back together and see where we're at. But yeah, looking pretty good, like how the lines turned out. So let's get some decals. So the decals are all on there, looking very cool. Got everything all touched up like I wanted to. Got the shields and stuff on there. So next we're going to go through and do some chipping, because I want to make this one pretty weathered, since I'm not going to be jacking it up or anything else, but I will get some weapons and everything on there. But before we get it all back together, we're going to chip it up, make it all kind of weathered and grunged up even more, and probably do some rust and everything else. But yeah, looking very cool, looking very MFP. Totally psyched that I actually got a Hot Wheels from Australia to do an MFP car. So let's get it chipped up, and then we'll see where we're at and where else we need to go. So let's chip. Alrighty, so we're all chipped up, looking very cool, looking very weathered. So the final touch that we're going to do with the rusting is going to use the medium oxide rust from Green Stuff World, and then we'll let that dry, and then we'll put some down and dirty rust on it. Now to do the green oxide rust, or Green Stuff World oxide rust, I'm going to be using the same sponge method that I did with the chipping. It just gives it a kind of a more of a texture, even more so than it already has. So just going to get some on there, and then just do it around the edges on the bottom. Get more of a random looking effect. And then when that dries, we'll go through and put the down and dirty on there. But just like how this method does it with the sponge method, whether you're doing chipping or rust or anything else, just gives it a much more random effect instead of just doing it with a brush or even trying to streak it, because just like, you know, trying to pick random numbers, the brain works a certain way, so it's not really random. Doing it this way, give it much more chaotic look, and rust's going to go any which way. So yeah, like how this method works. So we'll just get this done, let it dry, and then do the down and dirty, and then we'll start getting it all back together, do the fine details, stick some weapons on there, and this thing will be good to go. But yeah, looking good, loving the rust. Alrighty, so we are all rusted up, very corroded, loving how that's just turning out. all the combination of the green stuff world, down and dirty, and then dusting with some of the MIG dry brush rust. Everything just comes together and makes it look so corroded, so realistic. Just love it. So now we're going to get everything back together. Got some weapons going to stick on the front. Like I said, sticking it back on the original base and everything else. Glued the wheels because I wanted to be used for Gaslands. But yeah, love how this turned out. Let's get it all together, and then we're going to dust it up, do some final touches on it, and this thing will be good to go, ready for the Wastelands. But yeah, absolutely loving it. Let's get it all together. Alrighty, and there we have it. One MFP Ford Police Falcon GT from the Series 2 Barn Find Slammed Edition from the Ford Aussie Built Legends. And like I said, I'm just totally stoked that I got to do a build from a casting that came from Australia for an Australian police force from the originator of all the Gaslands and everything else, the Mad Max series. Absolutely love how it turned out. The rust, like that I kept the wheels and everything on there. Casting, weapons turned out great. Just love how this thing turned out. I hope everybody learned something from the stripings and stuff. Even though I covered it up with the rust and everything, it's good practice doing these MFP builds, like I said, because there is a lot of leeway and you're able to correct a lot if you're using the right paints. So if you enjoyed something, if you learned something, if you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, hit that like button. My goal is to do weekly videos, whether they're vehicle builds, terrain builds, battle reports, whatever. So if that's for you, hit the sub button below and ring the bell to get notified when new content drops. I do sell all my builds pretty inexpensively on my Etsy page, so if you want to see what else I've done, pick something up, you can even request a custom build. If you'd really like to show some love, head on over to my Patreon page and get signed up. Every little bit helps keep the paint flowing, the printer printing, and the camera rolling. Until next time, keep your foot on the gas and your finger on the trigger. Gaslands NorCal, signing out.
Carry, 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 carry.